some select countries across the world. So just stay with me for some time. I'm trying to build a case, okay? You can see in terms of GDP in trillions, the US is number 1, followed by China. Move to the extreme left, you will see Kenya, South Africa, Nigeria, and then Russia. Now move to the chart on the right. This time we're looking at GDP per capita. The US is still number 1, but guess what? China is no longer number 2. Who is now number 2? Germany, the UK, and France. Let's go to the bottom part of that chart. You now have Kenya, you have India, Nigeria, and guess what? South Africa has displaced Nigeria. Now you all know what GDP is, I know what GDP per capita is. Okay? So what that basically means that though this country may be relative to other countries in Africa, be very big in terms of GDP, and we could actually be the biggest economy in Africa, when you begin to look at it on a per capita basis, you begin to see a slightly different picture. Next slide. What this is saying basically is that if you look at contribution to GDP across the world, you will notice that Nigeria Information Technology, ICT, is contributing about 10.37. When our economy was rebased, what came out was that a few areas that we never thought about before, Nollywood, entertainment of course, ICT, became areas that contributed a lot to GDP. And what this slide is basically saying is that the two areas encircled in red are areas where Nigeria seems to play very well. And if you look at them very well, we have really contributed a lot with little or no support from government. Now this is very instructive. Mrs. Awoshika talked about entrepreneurship. And you all know that if you have good ideas and you go to the banks, the first thing they will ask you for is collateral. Therefore, the choice you make, the kind of opportunities you chase after, should reflect what you have in your hands. There's no point if you have no collateral in Nigeria of today, in the banking sector of today, of coming up with dreams about how you want to get into manufacturing. You're wasting your time. What do you have in your hands that you can use? So you have a very useful population that is growing. You have a country that is doing very well in internet technology. There are statistics that suggest that Nigerians have the highest rate of growth in people who use mobile phones to access the internet. That is what you have. The question is, what can you do? Okay? The next slide, I'm sure a lot of Nigerians would like to see this, is a list of the richest men in the world. Okay? Starting with Bill Gates of Microsoft and the like. What you take out of this slide is what? That 6 out of the 10 richest people in the world operate in technology. 6 out of 10 in the world operate in technology. So when we talk about technology in Nigeria and we're looking for how we can create more jobs, okay, create wealth, technology is an area we cannot afford to lose sight of. And guess what? Focusing on technology or digital technology, as I love to say, does not necessarily mean you must be an engineer by training. It simply means you must see opportunities and you must understand how technology can be used to address challenges in your environment. Okay? Next slide. This is another very instructive website information. The Vice President mentioned a few names in ICT, Jabberman, Konga, a lot of us heard about Uber. What this slide tries to show to us is just an understanding of a very simple truth that technology, though relatively new, has the potential to create the most wealth. If you take a look at this slide, the youngest company on that chart is Apple. You can say Apple was born in 1976, Intel in 1968, IBM in 1911, Microsoft in 1975, and of course Google in 1998. The babies on this chart are IBM, Microsoft, and Google. Okay? Now, look at the market capitalization. Google has 741 billion, and Google is the youngest. The oldest person here is IBM. IBM is 160, and then you have Intel, and Intel is 147. What does that tell you? That even within, although technology has the potential to create a lot, there's a kind of technology where you can easily create lots of value, and that is what we call digital technology today, and that is what is represented by the likes of Apple, IBM, and to some extent Microsoft. Let's go forward to next two slides. Next one. Okay, you can stay here. What this slide is basically saying, just 1 second, is that business models are changing. A lot of people have talked about Uber today. What a lot of people do not know is that Uber does not own any taxi. All Uber has is technology. In the past, if you talked about the biggest logistics company globally, what will you mention? You mentioned UPS, DHL, FedEx. And if you want to get to consumer rights, you talk about who? Europcar, Avis, and the like. Today, Uber has dominated that space with just what? Technology. Not one single vehicle. Uber does not care if there's fuel scarcity or not. Uber does not care if the car is faulty or it has to go for repairs. Uber does not care if the driver is ill and needs to go to the hospital. All Uber cares about is connecting someone who wants to move with somebody who has a means of taking you around. And all they have used to do that is technology. Alibaba, biggest retailer by market capitalization, but has no stores, has zero inventory. All they have is technology to connect buyers and sellers. Okay? Next slide. Next one. Okay. What you see on your screen, we've talked about the different industrial revolution. Okay? And I think it was Mrs. Awoshika that said in a hotel in, I think in Japan or so, when you get in there, the person that checks you is not a human being, but a robot. It is here already. And that is what they call the fourth industrial revolution, 4.0. Okay? A few years ago, InterSwitch partnered with a group of students from MIT who came to Nigeria for summer, and all they wanted to do was teach robotics. And I recall we had a debate in the office trying to find out why would InterSwitch support the teaching of robotics in Nigeria. I had the privilege of working for an oil firm many years ago, and I understood the importance of robotics if you're going to go into deep sea drilling of oil. And understood the importance of robotics if you want to run a proper car assembly line or an assembly line of any form. And so we partnered with these guys to teach Nigerian youths about robotics. It wasn't our intention that they'll become robotics experts, but we felt it was important that their eyes are opened to the opportunities that robotics can bring, hoping that in the process we can spark interest in maybe 2, 3, or 4 of them that perhaps may make them want to pursue that line of education. Okay? Now, The Internet of Things